Interview discussion. Andrej Karpathy visits Robot Brains, a new podcast by Peter Abil, a researcher, professor at Berkeley. It's about AI, it's about computer vision, it's about Tesla culture. Very interesting, of course. So we're going to discuss this. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast, March 24th, 2021. This is Krim Delko. For the day, the fund is down 4%. The market is roughly flat. We are down 8.5% for the year. The market is up 4%. We're underperforming by 12.5%. The market's still open, so there's still potential for changing of those numbers. We had a big drawdown this week. We went from during the day on Monday, we were up 2%. Now we're down 8%. So about a 10% drawdown within the span of 3 days. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund, and this is a very good example of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. It's unfortunately, you have these kinds of drawdowns. We're very positive on Tesla in particular. We think that this is technical selling driven by the ARK Invest funds. We believe that the liquidity, particularly in some of the biotech stocks that we own, is very timid, and therefore any kind of move can have very large impact on the performance. So this is our really sort of quick explanation of this drawdown. I just want to emphasize the fact that the emotional strength you need to have as a hedge fund manager is often underrated. This is one of those situations where we're incredibly positive. We just heard an interview with the director of AI and computer vision at Tesla, Andrej Karpathy. He's giving us a 1 hour really interesting deep dive into the workings of the company. We just spoke with Eric Berger, who wrote a book about SpaceX, gives us an unbelievable insight into the culture of SpaceX, which is obviously an Elon Musk company, and we can use a lot of corollaries between SpaceX and Tesla. So we're very positive on Tesla, more positive than a long time, and not because things have changed dramatically. It's just that we have more ground to stand on. I think that's a good one to explain why we're more positive. There are negatives. For example, we're not seeing cars being shipped out of Pier 80. I've mentioned that before. I mean, these are things that, of course, concern us. But again, I think fundamentally, long term, the culture, the base, the hummus, if you want, the ground on which all those seeds can grow, all those interesting business opportunities that Tesla is promising, all of that is strong, solid. The nutrition is there, the water is there, everything is ready, and we're very positive that Tesla can deliver on its mission to change, to decarbonize transportation, to decarbonize energy, to drive autonomy to the point where we don't have to drive cars anymore, to use AI for a lot more than just lane keeping on the highway. So let's talk about the interview now in a little bit more detail. I think there's 3 things I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about Software 2.0. This is something that I've heard a couple of years ago. Karpathy, he wrote a blog post. I saw him at a conference talking about it. I actually spoke to him about it at the Tesla AI Day. And I think it's underrated. I think it's definitely underrated because this is a huge thing. And Karpathy is making that case to Peter in this podcast. Because here's the thing. So he's this is not quote for quote, but kind of my understanding of what Karpathy is trying to say. So Software 1.0 is we write code in a language, say Python, C++. It then gets compiled into machine language. The machine language drives a certain drives the processor to do certain things. So this is how Software 1.0 works. And Software 2.0 is the programming is the data, the compiler is the algorithm, and the output is the prediction. So it's very different. So, and he said that in the interview in another context where he said that Tesla invests a lot in data curation. Data curation is the new programming because the compiler is the actual deep learning algorithm that compiles the real world data into something in technical terms. It's the weights that then allow for prediction. So if we take a blank sheet of paper, how do we write a software, let's say in the computer vision space? How does Tesla write software in terms of the car being able to keep its lane? Well, it writes an algorithm that says something along the lines of, listen, if you see a lane, then try to remember that what the car does with that lane. And then if the car tries to keep the lane, then no, actually, sorry, just if you see this, whatever this is, if you see something that the car keeps consistently doing, then keep doing that. In the future, if you see that, do it. So the algorithm kind of tries to put a framework in place where the data then drives the algorithm towards a place where its predictions will yield a result that is good for us. So, for example, keep the lane, make a left turn, don't drive when a pedestrian is on the road. So this is, again, the algorithm is the compiler, the programmer is the data curator. So this is, I think, the first thing that this has been going on for years. I think it's huge because it changes the way we write software, the way we organize software companies, the way we run software in companies. And I've spoken about iterate and debug a lot. Now, this is the ultimate iterate and debug, where the iteration and the debugging is implicit in the actual way the software is even written. In the old days, we would write a software, test it, see what happens, change code. Here, it is iterating by definition, by gathering data and iterating through the process of gathering data and compiling itself into a desired prediction. So iterate and debug implicit. This will be my addition. This is not Karpathy's, but I just feel this concept of iterate and debug, it comes back to visit us whenever we talk about Elon Musk. I think it's, if there's one thing this guy does, it's iterate and debug everything, even his wives. Well, he doesn't do that with his kids, fortunately, but I think in any station of life where he can, he does it. So again, software 2.0, I think it's been kind of under the radar. I think super important for the software industry, important for AI, important, of course, for Tesla, important for Andrej Karpathy, who is the author of this blog post and the author of the intellectual concept. I think I would say this is still part of the first takeaway here. I think Karpathy also talks about the fact that right now we have sort of this software 2.0, which is the computer vision part, but then the control part, the actual driving the car, is still software 1.0, so basically C++ and things like that, where we have hard-coded, okay, if the car predicts keep the lane, then do this, and etc. Now, he's saying he hopes that he will get to the point where everything will be in software 2.0 terms. So even the control of the car will be part of this new paradigm. I think the second takeaway is this is of course, well, it's important, I think, still. I mean, Peter asked Andrej, listen, when you joined Tesla, right? When you joined Tesla, you saw the bifurcation in the market. You saw that certain people, i.e. particularly Waymo and others, they're doing it this way, Tesla's doing it that way. Why did you do it? And his answer was, well, I thought the Tesla way is the right way. I think this is very important. This is one of the leading researchers in Silicon Valley in a field which is basically morphing into self-driving car technology. He can work anywhere he wants. He was at OpenAI at that time. He chooses Tesla. I think I just want to put that out there. Of course, they could be wrong. I don't want to, say that, oh, Andrej Karpathy is the holy grail of self-driving cars and he knows everything. And if he goes for Tesla, then that means Tesla is going to win. I still want to point out that, nevertheless, it is a data point. We have to take this seriously, and it's another strong indication that Tesla's on the right path. And I think Karpathy is talking about something I actually spoke about yesterday. It is low-cost hardware, low-cost software, low-cost engineering talent, all these concepts that we spoke about yesterday in the context of SpaceX and how SpaceX deals with the bit switch problem in space flight. This is a perfect application here in AI at Tesla. Same thing. Instead of using very expensive hardware, LiDAR is the most expensive, famous one, but there's a lot of other things that Tesla could be using that others are using. They're not using that. They're trying to use low-cost commodity hardware. They're then even the software side is trying to become more software 2.0 driven, which is really going away from very expensive software engineering towards a much more scalable, workflow-driven, low entry-level type necessary education. Of course, these people are highly trained, but we're not talking about PhDs in quantum physics here. This is the most important thing. So people can also iterate. You can iterate around people who are good at, let's say, data curation. And I think Karpathy is making the point. He's calling it data curation. He's not talking about data labeling or things like that. He is elevating that particular task to I think a very important task, and he's going out of his way to make sure that that his data curators are not just some dumb people who curate data. I mean, they do a lot more than that, and I think this just ties really nicely into this concept again: low cost hardware, low cost software, not bad software, not cheap software, but why build my own specific software language with a software compiler? Why not just use off-the-shelf stuff, C++, Python? Why not use AI algorithms that are that have been tried and tested in academia? Just use off-the-shelf stuff and then use it, of course, in a very specific way. And even more importantly, then make that step and invest more in what is perceived as a low-cost or lowly type of activity, when in fact this is really the holy grail. This is how Tesla actually functions, and we see Tesla a lot more like Google. Google has done similar things in search: low-cost hardware, software-driven solutions, massive scale. They've just outperformed all the competition. I think it was obviously the brains in Google, but much more importantly, I think it was the strategy of everything low-cost hardware, commodity hardware, like whatever you don't think has direct impact on your competitiveness, and whatever helps you to actually iterate much faster, you implement it, and then the rest just falls into place. So we've said that before. I think this is a very important, small detail maybe, but Google is a good analogy to Tesla, actually much better analogy than, let's say, Amazon or Apple. I think third, we think that in this interview, again, it becomes very clear that the AI is not just a thing or it's not just something that is part of the business. I think AI is going to morph into the business. AI is going to morph into the business, and we should expect a lot more from Tesla on the AI front. Karpathy says it on several occasions. We're just in the early innings. We're just reorganizing software to the point where we're going to be able to reap a lot more benefit out of this whole new architecture. We're redesigning, we're re-architecting software, and that is really the key. So while it's very difficult for us, of course, to quantify this, I think we can say with a lot of conviction that this approach of low-cost scalability and flexibility and the re-architecting of software fundamentally from scratch by using, again, low-cost commoditized hardware, basic software engineering methods, and most importantly, and I think that is the key, also talent that is not highly specialized. I think that's also very underappreciated. People have the impression that working for Tesla AI, you have to be a PhD in quantum physics or something. It's not the case. I have the feeling they're not saying it, but they're probably hiring not the most educated, Stanford, all of that. Maybe there is Stanford and all that, but it's not the most expensive people. And it's more importantly, the mindset of those people, I'm sure, is a lot more, hey, train me. please let me learn this. This is amazing. And I haven't, I haven't reinvented the wheel during my education. I am unique. I am willing to do something that nobody else has done before. So all these things that I think come into place, that you need to have that kind of culture in a place like Tesla. And I think there's a high likelihood that Tesla has that kind of culture in place. So again, I think the most important thing that on the third takeout here is that we have a lot more to expect from Tesla. So to summarize, Andrej Karpathy, director of AI at Tesla, he gave an interview at Robot Brains, a new podcast by Peter Abbeel. I'm very curious to see the next guests there. I think the first guest is already a big hammer there. Peter Abbeel used to work together with Karpathy at OpenAI. And I think the three key takeaways are: number one, Software 2.0 is still a very, very fundamentally new concept, and this obviously fits very well into our mission statement to invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. Number two, we have the low cost, low complexity, high scalability approach that we discussed at SpaceX, here at play also within the AI department of Tesla. And third, we should expect a lot more from AI. We see actually Tesla a lot similar to Google, in the sense that they're just going to grow and spread and use AI as the core engine of their business, and therefore monopolize the transportation industry, decarbonize the transportation industry, generate wealth, and move us away from fossil fuels in the meantime. Thank you.